As we had talked about in the last video on this channel, today's a weird day for NHL games. The Red Wings started out their day at, what was it, like 9 a.m. PST, 10 a.m. PST? What the hell's going on with the NHL? The Canucks have a game at 4 p.m. PST, but they're playing in Vancouver. What in the world is going on with that? We're getting the Boston-Toronto treatment here, baby. It's an odd day for NHL games, but there are still some interesting things to talk about, like the fact that the Detroit Red Wings went out there and smoked the St. Louis Blues in their game earlier this morning. 4 goals in the first period. That is magnificent. What a huge surge of energy. It's almost like the Wings play better in games that start earlier than 4 p.m. PST, 7 p.m. EST. Hopefully the Vancouver Canucks can go out there and snap their losing woes and just triumph over their competition in the same way. But in this video, what I wanted to do was go over some of the latest trade rumors that have popped up surrounding these two teams. One of them is kind of new, one of them is kind of stale. It's been there for a while. And I think now is as good a time as any to go out there and discuss whether or not it would be worth it. You know from the title, you know from the thumbnail, today we are talking about Pittsburgh Penguins forward Jake Guentzel. Because when it comes to him and his entire situation, the Penguins have not been getting any better, unfortunately. And now we are talking about the idea of a bunch of players on this team potentially changing homes. Particularly, we had talked about Erik Karlsson the other day, we had made a few videos about Sidney Crosby, but at the end of the day, the most interesting and most likely to move trade chip that is a part of this roster happens to be Jake Guentzel. Because when it comes to Guentzel and his entire situation with the Pittsburgh Penguins, it is precarious. He is expiring, he is going to be a UFA, and he's really good. Also happens to be fairly young. He's not old like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlsson. So Guentzel at 29 years old making $6 million till the end of this season. If he is traded for some sort of a, let's just say, half and half, 50% salary retained kind of deal, the team that's acquiring him will be able to get him for $3 million against their cap. And Guentzel this season is at 52 points in 50 games played. Now he's currently injured, but he is still on pace for a season that would see him getting about 81 points in 78 games if he were to come back, like, tomorrow. Now, he is out for a while. He'll be out for a few weeks until after the trade deadline, which makes things very interesting. But the latest from Elliotte Friedman goes out there and says this. It was talked about on the recent episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast. Elliotte Friedman mentions Jake Guentzel as a potential fit for the Wings with an extension. Ryan Hanna, who tweeted this out, who is on the Wing Wheeled Pod, also discussed Pittsburgh last episode with Brad of the Wing Wheeled Pod, and they pointed to Guentzel as fitting Detroit's needs, too. I could see Jonathan Berggren being an attractive piece for Dubas. Young, productive, and NHL ready. Now this is a very interesting conversation because it is just an idea, but hearing from Elliotte Friedman that the Detroit Red Wings could use a guy like Guentzel's services with an extension, it's one of these things where I feel if you were able to get this done, honestly, I think the fit makes a lot of sense. And the timeline fits too. Jake Guentzel is only 29 years old, so there still is a lot more time for him to become good, for him to have NHL productivity, and if you pair him with some of the guys on this Wings squad that are already boasting up pretty good results, Lucas Raymond is young and getting better, Moritz Seider young and getting better. We talked about Ben Sherratt yesterday. That guy is old, but he's getting a lot better. It's kind of crazy because his revival story has been one for the ages in Detroit. And this team, all of a sudden, is forcing their hand and clamping down that wildcard position. If the Wings wanted to make a push, if they can guarantee that they could sign Guentzel for next year and beyond, then maybe he becomes one of these veteran guys who is signed on and actually has some good productivity years left in him. Like you could say, the Comfers and the Cops may be just, of course, a tad better than them. But the Wings being involved here, especially with a trade idea for Jonathan Berggren, that is something that I think works out very well, because for Pittsburgh, if you talk about Berggren and his entire situation, he's been on the market, everybody's talking about him getting traded elsewhere. The Penguins, if they're going to trade for Guentzel, they need to get something young in return. They need to get assets that can help him out after Crosby, Malkin, and Carlsson retire because, I mean, as we've been seeing with Kyle Dubas, this seems to be a pattern of his. They always try to go for the now. They never really try to plan for the future, mostly because their priorities lie with the hearts of the players that are doing amazing things on the team currently. So if Kyle Dubas ends up trading Guentzel away, especially for a younger asset like Berggren, then I think it would make a lot of sense, but it would also be kind of interesting to see the first time in his career pretty much that he needs to tear an organization down. This entire we can and we will attitude that was picked up in Toronto, it was all right for building the team that they had, but for the most part, he had these already amazing established assets and he just had to roll with them. Now he's doing the same thing in Pittsburgh, but for how long is he going to be able to do that with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlsson? There is a timeline of expiry here that is on the horizon. But with this in mind, I also wanted to talk about the Vancouver Canucks because the Canucks and Guentzel rumors are still there. We have still been talking about this, and I think that now, with the Vancouver Canucks being in the position they're at, with this 4-game losing streak, with this apathy on the ice that we're seeing, with everybody complaining, whining, and expressing their frustration with the entire ordeal in Vancouver, you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, the Vancouver Canucks, contenders or pretenders, if they sign a guy, or if they trade for a guy, like Jake Guentzel, and it happens to be only a rental kind of move, they don't sign him to an extension, a la Elias Lindholm, for example, then is that something you would really want to do? I think maybe 3 weeks ago when the Canucks were winning and winning and winning and winning games, a lot of Canucks fans would have been on board, said, yeah, let's do it. We are already in a position where we are winning games. We're top of the NHL. We're a number 1 team. Let's go out there and make this team better. We just got Lindholm. Now we need another top 6 forward to replace Ilya Mikheyev's spot because that guy sucks. And if Jake Guentzel is the guy to come out here, then that is a very amazing option for Miller and Besser. It's an all-American, American line. And who knows the offensive potential and creativity that these guys could form together. But question is, with the Vancouver Canucks being as bad as they've been the past little while, some games they show up and they just completely get out to luck with the refs, like Minnesota. Some games they show up and the other team's goalie is just really gosh darn good, maybe like the Winnipeg game. And some games they don't show up at all, like the recent Seattle game. But with these results now popping up a little bit more often, the question is it worth it for the Canucks to still be pursuing something like this? They didn't trade away Tom Willander or Jonathan Lekkerimäki or any of their other top prospects in making the Lindholm and Zadorov trades, but when it comes to this Jake Guentzel, you kind of have to do that. He is really, really good, the most talented player that would be on the market by far in terms of what's already happened, and so if the Vancouver Canucks made a trade with some sort of a Tom Willander deal, for example, do you think that's really worth it? Do you think that would be seen in a good light? Is it just kind of a panic thing at this point if the Canucks tried to force their hand at making some sort of a move like this? I don't think it would be characteristic to classify an Alvin and Rutherford move as a panic move, but considering the circumstances and the context of the team lately, I think it's a fair thing to bring up. Like, the Canucks are not as good as they were a few days ago. They're starting to go down in terms of the standings. They're not number 1 anymore, but they are still one of the top teams in the NHL. So do you still give them the pass to be able to make these buyer moves? Be like, yeah, this is a cup contending team, and they're bolstering their roster to try to get better. This is not a pretending team. Last time we had seen the team be a pretender and make these trades with rental players, I'd say it was 2019. Tyler Toffoli, that's the deal that comes to my mind. The team is like 20th overall in the NHL standings, but they were making these moves as if they were buyers and top-tier teams in the NHL. It paid off because Toffoli was good with the Canucks in the regular season, and he played in the bubble playoffs that they had as well. The Canucks actually won a series or two, won the play-in, won the first round. But now, this is a different circumstance. They are a much better team, supposedly. They're not playing like it right now. They're going through a slump. Is now still the perfect opportunity to go after a guy like a Jake Guentzel, especially considering the fact that he's injured. You're not going to be able to have Guentzel on your team for a while after you make this trade, so if you're making a trade for him, you kind of have to guarantee that your results without him are already all right. So that's kind of my thought process about this entire thing. Trade update, we've got the Wings that are involved in the Guentzel conversation, and for the Vancouver Canucks, I wanted to have a bigger conversation as to the appropriateness as to whether or not this would be good. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're a Canucks, Penguins, or Red Wings fan. What are your thoughts on the idea of a Guentzel trade? What are your thoughts on what it would cost if you're a Penguins fan? What would you want from Vancouver or Detroit? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.